Jack the Ripper, the notorious and enigmatic serial killer, whose killer has remained a mystery to the world for over 100 years, could at last have been identified. DNA extracted from a shawl found at the scene of one of his crimes has allegedly matched 100%, surprising both historians and scientists in equal measure. The mist swirls heavy through the tall, narrow alleys of Whitechapel, hanging off the cobblestones like a pall. It's autumn, 1888. London's East End is a community where desperation and poverty have human faces. Somewhere in that fog of smoke and shadows, a murderer is on the move, unseen. His name will be heard in history more loudly than any general or monarch, but tonight he is only a figure disappearing into the mist, leaving silence and blood behind. For more than a century, the world has posed the same eerie question. Who is Jack the Ripper? Rumors have circulated like ghosts. Stories of royal cover-ups, mad doctors, foreign seamen, and artists mad with illness. The fog that enveloped him in life only deepened upon death, entombing truth beneath myth and sensationalism. But suppose the answer was all along? What if a single blood-soaked scrap of cloth contained the secret Scotland Yard could never solve? The name science might finally whisper across the years. That moment may have come 137 years later. To grasp the Ripper, first grasp Whitechapel, not the immaculate London of parlors and tea, but the one that society attempted to erase, a festering sore on the empire's body. In 1888, more than 76,000 were crowded into less than a square mile. Eastern European immigrants, Irish workers, and poverty-stricken English families lived huddled together in misery and filth. The streets smelled of manure, rot, smoke, and human waste. Slaughterhouses filled the main streets, their gutters gushing red with animal blood. Beggared children hawked matches. Women peddled the only commodity they possessed. The workhouses were crowded, the doss houses bursting. The destitute and the down-and-out slept standing up, thrown over ropes in shared bedrooms, or roamed the streets until morning. It was a world that gave rise to both hunter and hunted, a place where screams were unheard and darkness held sway. This was the void Jack the Ripper roamed, not as a stranger, but as somebody who knew its beat. History recalls his name, but not those of his victims. Mary Ann Nichols, 43, mother 5, was rejected from her hostel because she did not have the 4 pence for her bed. She was discovered hours later on Bucks Row, her throat sliced so deep that it almost severed her spine. Annie Chapman, 47, who was once respectable but now ill and homeless, was discovered in a backyard with organs extracted. Elizabeth Stride, 44, Swedish survivor, was found with her throat cut. Her murderer probably stopped short of finishing the job. Less than an hour thereafter, Catherine et al. Suffered similarly in Mitre Square, her face carved open, organs excised with sinister exactness. And then there was Mary Jane Kelly, aged only 25, younger and luckier than most, but ensnared by fate. On the morning of November 9th, 1888, the rent collector looked through her shattered window, and what he witnessed would forever haunt him. Her flat at 13 Miller's Court had been the site of unimaginable terror. The photographs that survive, blurry, sepia snapshots in police records, show something a great deal worse than murder. Her body had been systematically dismantled, the ultimate, horrific work of art from a murderer whose name the fog of time would never allow to perish. Her organs had been meticulously extracted and arranged throughout the room in a calculated fashion. Her face was grotesquely mutilated beyond all recognition, and the killer had taken a long time with her. Then, as quickly as he had materialized, Jack the Ripper was gone. What made him so successful wasn't supernatural cleverness. It was comprehension. He understood Whitechapel as a predator understands its hunting ground. The beat of police patrols, the heartbeat of the night, and the labyrinth of narrow alleys where a man could vanish in a matter of seconds, engulfed by fog and darkness. He timed everything to perfection. The majority of the killings occurred within the brief 15-minute lulls between police patrols, which he used with cold, surgical precision. He labored hastily, quietly, and with total mastery. Medical testimony is that each murder occupied 5 to 10 minutes from first slash to final mutilation. There were no desperate battles, no cries for assistance to alert witnesses. The locations of the murders, Bucks Row, Hanbury Street, Dutfield's Yard, Mitre Square, and Miller's Court, were not random. Each provided darkness, seclusion, and more than one means of escape. He knew precisely where the gaslight stopped and the shadows started. In Whitechapel, individuals looked out for themselves in order to live. So even if a person overheard something unusual, they seldom got involved. His murders were evidence not just of pathology, but psychology too. These were not crimes of randomness, but intention. The cuts were neat, precise. The extraction of organs showed signs of anatomical knowledge, or at least study. His offenses graduated from murder to ritual, indicating a mind governed by compulsion and control. It was performance, his method of imposing shape on the evil within him, and he found that he was able to do so openly in London's maze-like East End. The most sinister fact of all is that he quit. Following the killing of Mary Jane Kelly, the canonical Ripper murders were over. Maybe he died, was committed to an asylum, left the country, or maybe simply got tired. The final option is the scariest. That someone who could be capable of such monstrosity could just go back to normal life with the world searching for a monster. Right from the start, the police investigation was a shambles. There were two distinct police agencies, the Metropolitan Police and the City of London Police, and their jurisdictions overlapped infrequently. These two agencies never cooperated, and the notion of a serial killer did not even exist in Victorian England. The investigation was led by Inspector Frederick Aberline. He was efficient and diligent, but completely swamped. Thousands of statements were recorded, hundreds of suspects interviewed, and infinite letters poured in, most of them from individuals proclaiming to be the murderer. One of them, signed Jack the Ripper, provided the killer with his lasting nickname. Even though most analysts now believe it was a fake penned by a reporter, the Dear Boss letter, written in derisive tone and with threats of further murder, engraved itself on popular imagination. The signature didn't match any suspects, and the postmark told no tale, but the name took hold. Jack the Ripper was melodramatic, a music hall villain name, and the papers seized on it. With terror spreading, vigilantes emerged, newspapers published outlandish theories, and immigrants, and particularly Jews, were subjected to violent xenophobia. Following the killing of Catherine Eddowes, a chalk graffiti message was left at the scene. The Jews are the men that will not be blamed for nothing, lest there be riots. Police Commissioner Sir Charles Warren had it whitewashed out before the break of day. In 1894, a secret police report called the Macnaghten Memorandum named 3 top suspects. Montague John Druitt, a barrister and schoolteacher drowned in the Thames in 1888, Michael Ostrog, a violent Russian offender, and Aaron Kosminski, a Polish-Jewish immigrant barber who was subsequently committed to an asylum on grounds of insanity. None were ever charged. Forensic science didn't yet exist. No DNA, no fingerprints, no blood typing. The trail went cold, and Jack the Ripper passed from terror into myth, unsolved, unknowable, eternal. Then, more than a century later, a piece of cloth reignited the mystery. In 2006, businessman Russell Edwards bought a silk shawl at auction, said it had been found at the scene of Catherine Eddowes' murder. It was reportedly taken by acting Sergeant Amos Simpson and passed down through his family. The shawl bore dark stains resembling blood and traces of other fluids. Edwards enlisted Dr. Jari Luhalainen, a molecular biologist, to perform DNA testing. Despite the passage of 125 years, Luhalainen recovered mitochondrial DNA from stains, one matching a descendant of Eddowes, and another matching a descendant of Aaron Kosminski's sister. After 137 years, science had seemingly cracked the case. Jack the Ripper was Aaron Kosminski, a destitute Polish immigrant put away in 1891 and dead by 1919. The world went wild with headlines, books, and documentaries. But the scientific community was anything but convinced. Mitochondrial DNA can verify a maternal lineage, but not a person. The results proved only that someone from Kosminski's maternal line had contact with the shawl, not that Aaron himself did, or that it happened in 1888. Worse, the provenance of the shawl was tenuous. There was no record of it in a police database, no recorded chain of custody, and no official reference in case files. It had been handled, displayed, and stored over the years in unknown environments, circumstances for contamination. The DNA research never underwent peer review, and its methods were never independently checked. Even if genuine, the data establishes contact, not culpability. It would be best considered circumstantial. Nevertheless, Kosminski is the most likely suspect. He was a Whitechapel resident, handled razors, was of the correct age, and had severe mental illness. Notes by Chief Inspector Donald Swanson appeared in the 1980s, written in the margins of a book. Swanson said the police had caught the murderer being a Polish Jew who was identified by a witness, but the witness was not willing to testify. The suspect, wrote Swanson, was subsequently committed to an asylum and died there. The facts match Kosminski to a T. Maybe the question isn't really whether Kosminski was Jack the Ripper, without a shadow of a doubt, but if history and science combined make him the most probable suspect after 137 years. The mist that once shrouded Whitechapel is clearing, but even as we try to find answers, there are deeper questions. Why does Jack the Ripper continue to captivate us? Why do we recall his name, but not those of his victims? Perhaps it is because his tale is our own, humanity's ceaseless struggle with its darker half. The Ripper prospered in a culture that winked at its poorest members. His victims, Marion Nichols, Annie Chapman, Elizabeth Stride, Catherine Eddowes, and Mary Jane Kelly, were not faceless, unfortunate women. They were women with families, aspirations, and lives broken by poverty and circumstance. Their murders told us as much about Victorian England as they did about their murderer. We might never be certain with absolute precision who Jack the Ripper was, but we know who his victims were, and perhaps that is the truth that matters most. The shawl, if genuine, provides a whisper of evidence. The name Aaron Kosminski has both history's suspicion and science's intrigue, but